I put something in my mouth. Good evening and welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee, Subcommittee of Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Open Spaces. We have 4 bills this evening: HB 717, HB 719, HB 889, and HB 893. We're going to start with HB 717. Kristen, you can go ahead when you're ready.
I'm sorry, I'm looking for, okay, so I guess I lost you on my screen, but I guess I'm still here.
Oh, did you,
No, I don't know. I
you know what you
minimized.
did? You may have, I do this often. You may have, removed yourself, hid your screen. So like you can see everybody, but you can't see yourself.
I can't see anybody. I just, maybe I have too many windows up. I mean, that's fine. I guess I'll just,
I'm
um,
happy
The
to share
bill,
the bill.
yes, please.
um, all right. So I guess, okay. You guys can see and hear me, okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So this bill, we took it up a couple weeks ago, and there was DNR had submitted amendments that we went over in subcommittee, and since that time, we've received 2 new amendments from DNR and MACO. If Meredith has the reprint, and we can bring it up, and I can show
She has
where.
it up. She has it up, Kristen.
Oh, I can't even see that. What the heck? Um. Okay. I have no idea okay, so I'll just look at my copy. What is the timestamp on the one that's up on the screen? Can you see that?
March 4th at 12:58.
Yeah, it's the 4th at 12:58 p.m. Is that the right one?
Um, it's okay. I might have just not printed myself out a new one. It's fine. So I think just go to page 11 of the bill. And the department submitted an amendment that would add the natural resources police to the list of units that would be supported by the foundation. And then on to page 12, it just makes conforming changes to the purposes of the affiliated foundation would be to support also law enforcement activities.
Thank you, Kristen. And I want to clarify a couple of things. As we,
There's another amendment, and I'm sorry if you could.
I'm sorry, Kristen.
Well, it's okay. I'm sorry. I just can't see faces. So if you can just cue me when you're ready for me to move on by just letting me know that I can go on to the next. There's
Yeah,
one
go for
more. Okay, sure. And so this would go to page 15. And this was submitted from the Maryland Association of County Park and Rec Administrators. And it addresses the local component of program open space. And what the amendment does is that it would currently locals can use up to $25,000 each year of local program open space funding for planning purposes in the local land preservation plan. This would allow locals to apply for up to $125,000 for over the 5-year cycle of the plan, instead of it being, $25,000 per year. It's intended to save time and resources for both local government and the department. And then the second piece of this is counties currently are required to provide a certain match on development projects that use program open space funds. Current law requires 75% match of the total project cost, and this amendment would instead require a local 25% match of just the program open space funding piece. And that's everything new from since we've last talked about the bill.
All right. Are there any questions? Delegate Foley.
Okay, I know this is hard for you, Kristen, but I didn't understand that, and I can't find that last thing you just said in the bill. So what I see is, can you tell me where that last part about 75% is in the bill?
Sure, that's actually on page 16 of the bill, and I can see you guys all now. I found you.
Okay, So
At
it's
the
on
top.
page 16.
So on page 16, down
Oh,
at
I
the
see it now.
bottom, there's
Okay.
new language being
got it.
added that wasn't in the bill initially, and it's touching on what it's updating it from
Okay.
having to match the total project cost to just the program open space
Okay,
piece.
great. Thanks.
Mhm.
Delegate Otto.
Kristen, clarify that to me. It's saying on that cost match, a
Yes.
local government body may use up to is taking out 75% and making it 100%.
What page are you
Which-
on,
Um,
Delegate Otto?
So are you on the bottom of page 16 in item
Oh, I
1?
was at the top.
At the top.
Maybe
At the top. Okay, that's allowing, that's part of the bill, and that addresses when a local government has reached its attainment goals, that it can use
Okay.
up to 100% of its funds for development projects. Current law
Okay.
would allow 75% of those funds to be used.
All right, I see what you're saying.
But they have to meet that attainment goal first, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other
Have we
questions?
Have
Go
we
ahead.
addressed any amendments on this bill about the hiring of these a new person for every 400 acres of acquisition?
That's on, that's still in the bill. That's a requirement of the bill, that the department would make a request for positions. But there's not a requirement that those positions actually be filled, but the department would have to at least make a budget request.
Yeah, and that's on page 9, line 1. Delegate Otto, are you finished? You
Yeah,
have
I'm
any
sorry.
questions?
Go ahead.
That's okay. If you have other questions, we can certainly. Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to raise that I thought that basing a person on an amount of acreage seemed like a very strange way to do it, in the sense that, I'm sure there are vast tracts of Mongolia or whatever that could be managed. There's one thing going on that it's really not a matter of the acreage. It's a matter of what's happening on the acreage. And I could see, 1 acre being very difficult, or 20,000 being easy, just depending on what the deal is. I just wanted to raise that.
Well, I think it was addressed last time, and I don't know if DNR's on here to address that. I'm trying to find my other notes, but it was addressed last.
That number comes from a DLS
Absolutely.
study that
Right.
that was a calculation that was recommended as a part of a study.
Okay, thanks.
Does that help or
But
no?
DNR is here if you wanted to ask them to elaborate.
Mr. Pedito, are you available?
And thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, it's a good question, Delegate. This was born of the DLS study that was commissioned from the Great Maryland Outdoors Act. And it used sort of our most recent data to come up with that calculus. Your point's a good one, right? We could buy a 2,000 acre tract tomorrow that does not require substantial staffing because there's no infrastructure. But reality is, the properties that we buy today in our market are generally going to have infrastructure and require staffing, because truthfully, we've got a lot of that sort of low-hanging fruit already in our portfolio. Those big undeveloped tracts generally don't exist much in Maryland anymore. And that's the challenge for us, is sort of striking that balance. That's a
So it
fair
makes
question.
sense to you.
Pardon me?
So it makes sense to you as a way to figure out how many people you need.
Yeah, we
And per
we
the
think it's a
study.
fair way to do the math.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, thank you.
And I just want to point out I think it's another way of saying we're not going to keep buying all this land, and then for a staff that's already understaffed, then you have nobody to staff it, right? And so it's a good, thank you to DLS study to say, I guess, and if you can mention when you say infrastructure, what do you mean by infrastructure?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Indeed, almost every place we buy nowadays has roads and buildings and neighbors and in holdings, and all of those require our attention, our presence. So it's a different model. We would love to get another Jesuit purchase, right, where we pick up 4,000 acres with not a lot of things on it, but it's a tough market for us to purchase in.
Yeah, no problem. Just want the explanation for the body.
Okay.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also point out that anything less than 400 acres, I think this says you don't have to hire staff. But, which is also, that might be a good thing. My question though is, I do see that real property was canceled, was crossed out, and fee simple was put in here. I don't remember which set of amendments that was or whatever, but can you explain what the difference is and why that change was made?
Is that for me?
Chair
Or
Boyce, did you want me to take that, or did you want DNR to?
Krista, you can take it and then we can get DNR to.
So the bill is defining the term real property, and I think it's for purpose of consistency of terminology that's used by the department, and that includes fee simple acquisitions, conservation easements, or another perpetual easement interest. Where the amendment changes it to fee simple is with respect to the department making these budget requests on land, newly acquired land. The amendment is intended to say that this is just applies to the newly acquired land held in fee simple and not to conservation easements.
Does that help? Delegate Foley?
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you.
Delegate Jacobs?
All right now.
All right now.
Let's get Paul back on here. I got some questions for him.
He's here.
All right now. So Paul, Delegate Foley brought up a good point. She said, well, if it's less than 400 acres, you don't hire somebody. So is this a cumulative or is this individual? When like in the last 4 years, they bought 8,790 acres, I think the number was. So how does that transpire over into this bill?
it would be each individual transaction. It would not be cumulative, Delegate.
All right, so that's good. Like in my district, there's a lot of property purchased in 36 for some reason. It's the most beautiful place in the state, I believe, and that's why they come over there and buy it, take it off the tax rolls. And much of it is right up against like Elk Neck and some of the other parks that are existing. So I guess if it's under 400 acres, it's not relevant. But I mean, how many people do you need to work at these parks? Because, you know, a couple years ago, we passed the Great Outdoors Act, which, you know, had 100 people were hired in there to fill the void just a couple of years ago. So I'm just trying to get my hands and my head wrapped around this thing, because you know, it just seems like we spent an enormous amount of money a couple of years ago on the Great Outdoors Act. I don't know if we filled every position. We're short of people. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but it's very concerning to look at this 400, 1 per 400 going forward for me.
I understood, Delegate. That same DLS study came up with the 1 for 400, and it included in their analysis were those new Great Maryland Outdoors Act positions. Those positions really only brought us up to what the number that we needed to be back in about a decade ago in order to manage the growth in acquisitions we have. I think it was included in our bill report, but there's a graphic that basically shows the number of acres we have going up to 500,000 now. And I've been around about 30 years, and I can remember when we had 150,000 acres in that portfolio. That growth from 150 to 500 did not correspond with a growth in positions managing those places. In fact, there was a decline over that same time period in the number of positions. So really what the Great Maryland Outdoors Act did was sort of bring us back to a base level, but it didn't account for the additional growth and our growth going forward. And frankly, our interest in growing in more populated areas and building out, the first state park in Baltimore City, the first in Wycomico County. So it is, it's not a perfect calculator, but we think it's a good way to thread the needle.
And it also keeps you from not having less people moving forward. So you may not have quote unquote enough, but you wouldn't be continuing to a deficit of people to acreages of land as you grow acreages of land.
Yeah, that's spot on, Madam Chair. I mean, we want to keep acquiring land, but if we do not have staff to operate and manage, then the difficulty becomes you all end up with a place that is sitting vacant and unmanaged, and those become, frankly, attractive nuisances. And we'll hear about that. So again, we're trying to strike a balance here.
So, in the past couple of years, the state's hired about 3,000 or more employees. Have any of those been hired for these parks at all? Or this
We
land?
are in the
the
process.
land that we're talking about.
We are in the process of building out the team for all of our public lands, forestry, wildlife, and our state parks. But again, if you look at the growth in acreage as compared to the positions, those two lines do not intersect. And frankly, they probably never will. But we're trying to make the lines a little more congruent than disjunctive.
All right, thank you.
Yes,
Are you
sir.
satisfied, Delegate Jacobs? Do you have any more questions, Delegate Jacobs? Are you good?
No, I'm going to stop right there.
Oh, you can keep going if you want.
You
So
said we got an hour and I got two bills on the bottom of the list.
this, sir, yes, I understand. I do want to, before we potentially, move the amendments and move the bill, I just want to put out there, because I know I and many of you have been getting emails about program open space money and the fear of it going away. So I met with the secretary Friday, as well as Emily Wilson, and I thank them very much. And I just want to put it on the record so we can hear what is actually happening versus what people think is happening. And so, pipeline money and funding money. So that DNR says over the past 3 years, the active project pipeline, projects under consideration and negotiation have averaged about $90 million. And then on average, they estimate around half of the projects will get to settlement. So the pipeline includes all program open space money, stateside grants to local governments and partnership projects with local grant trusts. So the program open space stateside encumbrances with BPW approvals have averaged 20.5 million a year over the last 10 years and 25 million a year over the last 25 million a year over the last 20 years. So DNR is certainly working on increasing those program encumbrances from 30 to 40 million a year, and we'll reach that probably in 2025. And so the question has been asked, if the level is 80 million and every year you potentially can take, they can only take that money if they're in a deficit. And their deficits tend to be somewhere like maybe this year, 16.4 million. Next year, they maybe have nothing at all. So this is not money that's being rated every year. It's only when they have a deficit, and that money still has to be approved through DBM. And so looking at numbers over the years, I know people are worried about maybe 1 year is just 80. And I'd let folks know if DNR is having a deficit and the program open space stateside funding is only 80 million, then DNR is SOL. there's no money to take. If it's 10 million over, it's a 90 million and it's 10 million potentially to go towards a deficit, and a deficit is 5, they'd be taking 5, they wouldn't be taking 10. And so just to clarify that this is not a taking, and it's only if there's a deficit, and of course, only if our financing agency approves it. And I think I got that right, Emily and Assistant Secretary. And so that is what they have stated, and the 80 million essentially balance figure was selected to not impact projects in the pipeline or the department's ability to partner with local governments or local land trusts on projects. So I wanted to just put that out there because there have been questions. I know maybe you're not getting the emails, but I'm surely getting emails about that. And then there was question about payback, because this is not a general fund. It's going from a special fund to special fund, so there really isn't a requirement to pay back the funds. Is there any questions? Is there a motion to move the amendments?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second, thank you, Delegate Foley and Ruth. All in favor of the amendments, say aye.
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 Any opposition to the amendments? Okay, the bill is amended.
So moved.
Is there second? Okay,
Second.
any discussion on the bill as amended? Any concerns? Okay. All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Jacobs. Just Jacobs? And Baker, okay. Bill moves favorably to the committee. Okay, thank you so much, Kristen. I know, Patrick.
Yes, ma'am.
We have HB 719.
Okay, if you want a quick reminder,
Yes.
this bill conforms the statute governing personal flotation rights with Coast Guard requirements. Repeals requirement that DNR boating regulations be published in the newspaper. Creates a voluntary 2-year non-motorized vessel decal for $12. Increases various fees that we went over last week, and increases full funding limits for Waterway Improvement Fund. There were amendments which my notes indicate were adopted last week that increased the threshold for 100% waterway improvement project funding, authorizing matching funds, waterway improvement for projects above the threshold, and then increased small project thresholds under the Waterway Improvement Fund.
Thank you. Are there any questions about this bill? This is essentially a simplified, more straightforward bill than was last year, Delegate Jacobs, if we can remember. Last year, the bill had a tiered system for boating fees. And as a reminder, the boating fee is $24 for 2 years. For any size boat, which has not been increased since I think 1984.
Yeah, 3, I believe.
And so this is a way to, one, be on par with pretty much the rest of the kind of East Coast. DNR took a look back and went back from when the fees were put in and moved forward to do something that was a little bit more kind of in line with inflation. And so it could be more, but it is less. And with that, I will shut up, and I see Delegate Foley has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a lot of noise in my office, so I'm.
Sorry, you tell them to be
myself.
quiet.
Yeah. Well, it's actually the office next door.
Ah,
I know it sucks to be in the ghetto, but anyway, we call this the ghetto over here. Anyway, the point what I wanted to ask Patrick is, where is the language about not requiring advertising in the newspaper?
Oh,
Page
okay.
3
Page 3,
at the top under 8704.
870.
Not the very top, line 5 through 10.
Line 5 through 10. Oh. All right, so if that comes out, is there any, I don't remember, I think we had this discussion, but is there any other requirement that there be any publication of this anywhere, like on a website or?
Well, the Administrative Procedure Act.
Right, AELR.
Oh, that's right, you did say that. And what does that
And
require?
they do public notices all the time too when they change the rules.
So that's right. Now I remember. You did say that when I asked this question before. So the public notices procedure does require some sort of public notice. Can you just tell me what that is? Like, what is the public notice?
Well, public notices is something they do on their own. The Administrative Procedure Act requires notice and comment and publication and the like in the Maryland Register, formal adoption.
Okay, so it would be published in the Maryland Register?
Yeah.
Okay, but there's no, okay. But there's no, like, if I'm a member of the public, how do I know where that is?
Maryland Register?
Yeah.
It's in the library, it's online.
I guess the question is, and maybe this is a question for DNR, do you have a sign-up list where people are
Right.
sent?
How does the public know how to weigh in here? Yeah, I understand it's available, but nobody knows. I can't tell you how to get there, right?
Well, there's legal requirements for public notice, open comment period. And that's the Administrative Procedure Act. If you're looking for a regulation, keep an eye on it. And DNR, I happen to know, does talk about and publish their own regulations on their website and give a pretty thorough breakdowns and rationales and the like.
But is there any requirement under the administrative procedure article that they do that?
That they do the breakdowns? No, but
No, that they
make
put it on their website.
No, but there is requirements for public notice. If you're looking for DNR regulations, and this is what it's talking about, then you know to look in the Maryland Register.
So if DNR is on the call, I know what the delegate is saying. Essentially, if you're not a part of that community, but somehow you
know.
need a part of the information, how would you ever find out? So the question is, does DNR have an active website, or excuse me, a sign-up site that you can sign up, and every time they have these kind of regs, maybe you get a notice about it? Do you have a self-sign up? Is there somewhere you can go on the website and say, I want to sign up and I get this? How else would you get it if I'm not looking at a website? Emily?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Subcommittee. In addition to the Administrative Procedure Act, which is what guides all state agencies when they go through the regulatory process, as Patrick mentioned, we have extensive public input in a lot of what we do. We have several advisory committees that we are in constant contact with. So any kind of regulatory proposal that we would be putting forward would not only follow the normal Administrative Procedure Act, but we also work very closely with our advisory commissions. And we rely on those folks. They're representative of the industries that are regulated. And they, like I said, they're representatives, so they go back to their constituencies as well with the information that we provide them. And we do scoping meetings with affected stakeholders, et cetera.
And Emily, you might want to mention that these are public meetings.
Correct. They are public meetings, yes.
Okay. Madam Chair,
Delegate.
may I follow up? Because
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about this, because what we're deleting, not just the newspaper part, which seems a little like excessive, actually. I said that as a newspaper supporter. But what I don't like is that there's a provision in what we're deleting here that allows citizens to petition to conduct a public hearing on this. And I am a little concerned. I appreciate that you have commissions and everything else, but it seems like prior to deleting this language, there is some desire to have public input on this. And I think we're taking that out. And I'm a little concerned about that because I think this does affect the public, right? Now, we might not technically be taking it out, but if I'm a member of the public, how do I know that there's a change? You know, how do I know that there's a new regulation? How do I know, how I can give input to it? I don't unless it's in a place that's accessible to me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think over the years that I've been here, I've seen, not just with this department, but with other ones, removing them, especially as newspapers tend to be more online. One, two, it's a somewhat of a cost burden. But three, I think it sounds like they do some kind of what we do with our own communities, right? It's something is happening, we go to that community association, or we go to that town hall in that community, and that information ends up filtering down, and you have additional meetings with other stakeholder groups. And so it sounds like what they're saying is that they have stakeholder groups that they know to contact on certain subject matter, where they can get feedback, where those people can filter down. So for instance, the Oyster Advisory Commission, I'm on the commission. Every time something comes up, there are certain people that get that information, they filter it down, and we know those certain oystermen, those watermen are right there at those meetings. They're held through the Watermen's Caucus, for instance. They get that, certain information and updates there. So I think it's the kind of like phone tree filtering in, as well as putting stuff online, as well as going through the process, I think the question is, if Emily can answer this, I think to your more, even more, I think important point, if citizens, residents wanted to petition, petition a certain regulation, they can still do that, correct? And if so, how?
Right, there's still, the Administrative Procedures Act is essentially the Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review Committee. So that's, our regulations go before that committee, and that's a very public process. And people are encouraged to come and not only submit testimony, it would be very similar, if not the same, to a bill hearing. So that's what the AELR committee's job is to oversee regulatory proposals put forth by all of the agencies. And I just want to stress that this part of the bill is bringing that procedure up to date with current practice.
So what I hear you saying is that, so for instance, you don't need 50 residents to file a petition. If it's just one and they show up at that hearing and testify, they'd be on record for testifying for or against your regulations.
Correct.
Anybody can comment, and ALR can call for a hearing on any regulation.
Yeah, okay.
It seems like this regulation here on paper, this requirement is a bit cumbersome because it has to be a certain amount of people, and those people have to petition 15 days prior to an effective date, whereas now you bring it to the LEAR, and I say, I can say, I can just show up. I can just comment there. Or I can petition there.
Where does it say? Well, okay.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to vote. I just think that this bill takes away rights of the public to intervene here. So it doesn't have to be what it says in the bill here, but if I'm a member, and this is not oysters. It's like, it's personal.
I was giving it to as an example, Delegate Foley.
Yeah, but this is personal licenses, and this, average people are doing this, right? So they may or may not, they're affected by this. And I'm just not sure that they know to go through that procedure.
I think that's fair, but I wonder if in place of this, it's mentioned something about if it makes it a little better, explicitly stating that that process is in place for folks to still comment.
Well, that would be, Madam Chair, that would be better. But, you know, you did mention that that DNR puts it on its website. That would be even better if we codified that, right? At least people would know that I go to DNR to apply for these things. And if I go on the website, I see, you know, I can see these notices. So what you suggest, Madam Chair, would be better than nothing. But I also, you know, I also think that if we could put it on the DNR website, that also would be good.
But they said it's already on the website, if I'm correct. Am I correct?
We do, and I want to stress too that we work very, very hard and very, very closely with the affected constituents all across the department. So with this, you know, we have a State Vote Act Advisory Committee. And as I said, there's representation on that committee of all the different sectors of the voting public. And all of our regulations are getting discussed through our advisory committees. This information is put up on our website. It's not something that's necessarily part of the Administrative Procedures Act. So we're actually going above and beyond what's currently required of not just the Department of Natural Resources, but as I said, all state agencies. All state agencies follow the Administrative Procedure Act. And then you also, as I said, have the Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review Committee of the legislature that reviews regulations.
Well, I would just like to see some language that says that it's going to be publicized on the website. I understand that you already do it, but you're not
Yes.
required to do it. And you know, I do trust the current secretary to continue that practice, but that may not be the case in the future. And I just don't think people understand, you know, the Administrative Procedure Act. And, you know, to lump it all in together, I would just like to see it, you know, put somewhere else. Since there already was in the law, there was a presumption that we wanted to tell the public what was happening here. And we're taking that out. So that's my opinion. And
I understand, but I believe there are other sections of law over the years where that similar type of language has been in and then replaced with the current Administrative Procedures Act, which governs how agencies do regulations. And I also have Sarah Widman on here too. I don't know if it was okay. Maybe she can elaborate. She's a little bit more involved in the day-to-day process of this.
Oh, is she on? Oh, hey,
Hi,
Sarah.
Madam Chair. Hi. Yeah, I can elaborate. I just wanted to point out a few years ago, and I want to say 2017, 18, the Small Business Administration passed a bill that had codified our scoping process, which was a process we've done, I think, since 2006 or 7, where we go out to the public. People can sign up for emails. So for instance, if they were interested in voting, they would get emails anytime we're looking at reg changes or anything else is going on in voting world. But they codified what we did. So we are required, all state agencies now, for 15 days before we go to the APA process, you have to put out small business impact guidelines that like explain the regulation you're doing. And it's no different for boating, fishing, anything we're doing with regs. So that's required to be up on our website under that statute currently. I just want to make sure that was clear. And then of course, like the emails that I just noted, and I think you guys have gone over all the other relevant places we intersect with the public, but we do try to get that out. And again, as a reminder, this was, and I don't know why it wasn't cleaned out, but this was pre-APA language. So this was an attempt to get
I
stuff out
understand.
to the public before we had an APA.
I understand.
Now it's sort of duplicative, and that was our point in getting rid of it because it's no longer relevant. And then we have kind of new stuff in place that took over.
That makes sense, and that makes sense. That is clear. That made a lot of sense. So essentially, there is in another section of law that has codified how you and any other department needs to interact with the APA. So this seems redundant and duplicative. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Delegate Jacobs. I'm sorry, Delegate Foley, are you done? I don't want to move on from you if you're not done.
Yeah, I talked enough. Thanks.
All right.
Talk as much as you want. Delegate Jacobs?
I just wanted to mention to Delegate Foley and others on here. You may have the ability to testify on AELR, but it's not easy.
Okay.
It's a convoluted experience. You have to get a member of AELR on an emergency bill to hold the bill and ask for a hearing. It may take 1 to 2 months to have the hearing. And then it's up to the chairs, co-chairs of AELR, how many people they're going to let on. It's not an easy process by any means. So
Is it the process or is it the people?
I'm just telling you, I've participated several times in this. I've been on there about 10 years and it's not easy for the public.
Okay. Any more discussion? Any more thoughts? Any more concerns? Linda? Thoughts? Any additional thoughts, concerns? Anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, well, my concern is I just, I'm not familiar with the Administrative Procedures Act. I don't distrust what was said, but I am, Delegate Jacobs points out that it's not exactly a friendly procedure for the public to participate.
Yeah,
And
I hear you, but it sounds like this is only here because it preceded, or it certainly preceded the APA. And so now that the APA is in place, it sounds like this is no longer needed. They're just essentially removing this because there's already a practice, and the practice is already codified in another part of law, is what I'm hearing Sarah and Emily state.
And just to be clear, part of that law and practice is that they're required to put it on the DNR website. Am I correct?
That's
what I understood. Sarah, can you clarify, please?
Sure, Madam Chair. So there's the APA, which I just want to clarify. Under the APA, there's a law under that section that anyone can petition us for a regulation at any point, any state agency, directly to us. This other law was under Small Business Administration, and I can find it and send it over to you guys. I can't remember the section, but it's a more recent one that required us to put up a 15-day scoping time period where we put out specifically small business impacts, but we lay out what the regulation proposal would do before we even propose it through the APA. So it's an addition to the APA that required us to do that.
Okay, I'm going to ask again. Does the law require that you put it on your website? That's all I'm asking to know.
Yes, that law
right.
requires that we have it up there before we even propose it. Correct.
Okay,
Yes, the small business one. Yes. I'm sorry. Okay. Any other questions? Any other concerns? Is there a desire to move the amendments?
The amendments are adopted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a desire to move the bill?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of 719 to move favorably to the full committee, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Baker, Jacobs. Thank you. All right, going to HB 889, striped bass or rockfish juvenile survey.
Hey, Meredith, you want to move that down a little bit? Now, these are amendments that were, I believe, I don't want to speak for them, but I believe they were agreed to by the sponsor and the department.
I believe that is true.
And
You'll tell us
the
if they're
department
not.
took the opportunity, this is kind of an old statute, to update the statute. Required the department to conduct scientific monitoring, collect biological information to determine the abundance of striped bass throughout the Chesapeake Bay. And then for 2 years, the department shall conduct sampling using the same methods in at least 2 sites in the central region of the bay, different from where they currently sample.
Right. So this is essentially a census, to see if, and a collection of data to see if at some point we need a survey. Delegate, I'm sorry, Patrick, are you done?
For now, yeah.
Go ahead.
I know I'm done.
Yes, okay. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, if I understand right, rather than just adding these additional sites to the juvenile index survey, we're doing a survey for 2 years in 2 sites, but not officially adding them. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a census, as it was described to me. It's a census.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. No,
Thank you.
they're gathering the data, as a census, in order to see it's with that data if they then need potential surveys. Delegate Ruth, do you have any other questions? Are you good? Okay, Delegate Jacobs.
I just want to say that this is, in fact, an amendments that I agreed to. I think it was thank DNR for offering these amendments. At least we're going to get 2 additional sites with a 2-year sunset on there, and that's better than what we had. So
I'm glad you worked that out.
we worked out something positive.
Great. If you're happy, we're all happy. Are there any other questions? Any other concerns? Is there a desire to move the amendments?
Move the amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the amendments? All in favor of the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Other than we got questions about the sponsor.
All right, now.
The bill is amended.
Move favorable.
Is there a
Second.
second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Bill moves favorable to the full committee. Last bill, 893. Patrick, I looked at this and it seems weird to me, so I hope you can explain it.
Okay. This is based on our discussion yesterday,
Yes.
and I'm trying to flip through the amendments. Okay, well, first let's take a look. There was a confusion about the early part, so I think based on your input from yesterday, we simplified that. That's on the bottom of page 1, the top of page 2.
Okay, we removed,
For the first violation, the person is suspended for up to 5 years. For a second or subsequent violation, revoked.
right. Then I thought we were going to just remove six through 16, or we were going to remove.
Well, it's tricky in terms of language. All this does here is say that you can apply for and be issued an oyster authorization.
Meredith,
if
can you
were-
move it up to the 3rd page, please? Thank you.
All right, maybe move it a little bit up more.
There we go.
There you go. I basically struck the whole language and put in some new language. And I believe, I can't speak for him, but I believe Sarah told me that DNR was okay with this. Maybe if we could confirm that.
So is Emily still on? I can't see because of the.
I'm here, but I think Sarah can share
Okay.
better background on this.
Sure, Madam Chair, I can speak to it. The only thing we just wanted to make sure in that text that the way it's worded right now, there was a little concern from staff about whose authorization was revoked under this section. And we were worried that if someone went on to be revoked fully under the points process under 4701, that maybe they would come back in under this because it's just talking about
Right.
only revoked here. So that was our only big concern on that, and just clarifying what it meant, as far as
Yeah.
applying back to the department, that they don't just get it straight back.
Right.
And that I'm open to, anything the AGs might have to offer, but the way I read this is very simple, is that if you were revoked under this, and then you spend the 5 years, then you can come back in under this. But if you're revoked under something else, this has nothing to do with it. You're still revoked.
At the under 4-1210 specifically.
That's this.
Yes.
Okay, right, correct.
So I feel like I read it a little different, but Delegate Ruth?
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't want to interrupt if you're still talking about
No,
this.
I'm not.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask if we could check with CBF, Allison, and see if they're okay with the amendments.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Ruth. I just want to quickly say I appreciate the extensive conversation on this and the amount of thoughtful consideration you all are giving this. I recognize this third meeting on this bill. With the section that you all are currently looking at, our main question was if it still met the intent that I believe you all discussed yesterday and we supported, which was that someone who is currently revoked could be reinstated only if they hadn't had additional violations while they were revoked.
Exactly.
So just, otherwise okay with what we're seeing here, but I just wanted to make sure that that was captured in the new language that has been drafted. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Dr. Colden, you're okay with this? I don't know if you've seen this new draft, but you're okay with this new draft as written if it meets the requirements that we all agreed to?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Foley.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So where does it, Patrick, does it say in this language that what Allison just said, which is, pardon me, if you commit another violation while these are for people that were revoked before July 1, 2025. If you have committed another violation in those 5 years after the date, does this reflect that you can't get reinstated?
If you commit a second violation, you are revoked.
Yep. Point blank, period.
No matter when you committed, even if it was during that 5-year period.
Doesn't matter. Second violation, you're revoked.
Okay.
So line 14 sounds like it gives DNR the ability to also say no.
Line 15, you said?
Line 14 on page 3 of the rewrite. So the department may accept an application for and issue an oyster authorization to a person whose oyster authorization was revoked under the section before July 1st, 2025, beginning 5 years after the date of revocation.
Yeah, it's authorizing. I assume they would accept most applications unless there was another reason not to, such
Which would
as
be
another
another-
revocation.
Or another, okay. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just responding to that because number 2 has a shall in it. The department shall reinstate.
Yep.
Yeah, this is referring to, if you remember the hearings, that we're talking about two different things here. One is your oyster authorization, which is your license. Well, it's not your license, it's an authorization under a license. And then this is the ability to work on a boat, work on dealer, work under someone else's license, which is also prohibited. Now, if you go and apply for a license, apply for an authorization, you're not going to get one right away, probably, because, you got to get, like we said, the back of the line. But
Right.
there's no reason that you should be eligible for one and not be able to work on the boat.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Um, so should two be a subtitle of now what is one? Because really two depends on if one is accepted. Am I reading that wrong?
Well, they have the same standards. They both have to have been revoked before July 1st, 2025, and then had to wait 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both operating under the same standards. But if you try to write it so that they're reliant on each other, it gets confusing.
I'm confused now. Delegate Jacobs.
Going back to what Patrick was talking about earlier about being able to work on when you're in suspension, even though you're waiting, that would be a lifting of the entitlements, right?
That would be reinstating the entitlement.
The entitlements, but not to be able to oyster, just the entitlements.
Right. To oyster, you would have to get the authorization, and
Right.
you might be eligible for the authorization,
But
but you
I'm-
have to wait in your line.
I thought that might be simpler to understand because that's in the legislation that if you lose your entitlements when you get the revocation.
Right.
But under the suspension, you would get your entitlements back, but not your oyster authorization until you get God knows how many years in line and you can get your authorization back. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just wanted to quickly just check in with DNR and just say is this all making sense? I mean, they did originally write the original legislation, so, and we certainly thank them for working on this in the interim for this subcommittee and for Delegate Jacobs and Adams. I don't know if that's Emily or Sarah or Assistant Secretary Petito that can speak to this.
I'm happy to weigh in, Madam Chair.
Yes, please, thank you.
Yeah, it does make sense that as I'm reading it, the first part is saying that I'm kind of viewing them backwards a little bit, but you would be eligible to apply for that license again, the actual authorization. And the second part is saying your 5 years are up, your entitlement to participate in the industry, whether you're applying for a license or you're a crew member, you can do that again.
Got it. Okay. All right, everybody's happy, I think. With that, is there a motion to move the amendments?
I move the amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Any opposition to the amendments? The bill is amended.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
thank you. Any further discussion about this bill? All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Good job, good people. This is done. I appreciate all your work on this. We will, and thank you, Delegate Jacob, for your patience. I know this was your bill and this was important to you, and it certainly was important to all of us.
Wait a minute, Madam Speaker, Chair.
Yeah, don't do that.
You actually froze right in the vote as the vote was taking place, and I couldn't hear everybody. But
Oh, no.
my screen froze. But anyhow, I want to thank the subcommittee for all the good conversation. I know this has been a lot of time and effort put into this, but it does mean a lot to some people that were caught on that one time and the lifetime revocation seemed a little harsh. So I do thank you and the department for all the work they've done to get this through. I think it was a good compromise with all of us. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your advocacy. And I am going to try to schedule for us to have 2 subcommittees next week. So just pay attention to text messages as I kind of send off some ideas and some suggestions for dates and times. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second, Madam Chair.